Remember when you were a kid and the teacher said, okay, pop quiz, hot shot. And you're like, oh no. And then the teacher says, today's pop quiz is you have to name as many capital cities in the United States as you can, state capitals. And you're like, I know them all. Or in our case, you have to name all the team colors of every team in the NFL. Whew, I know all those. That's what happened to me today when I saw what Dan Orlovsky did to the Cowboys, did to CeeDee Lamb, did to Jerry Jones, did to you. Every once in a while, and I know this happens to all of us. It's just your lucky day. It's raining out, and you almost stepped in a puddle, but then I don't know. There was a rock in the middle of the puddle, and you stepped on the rock instead of the puddle. It's just your day. This is my day. This is my wheelhouse. Dan Orlovsky and ESPN has just thrown me a fastball right down the middle, except it's traveling at about 45 miles an hour, and I think I can hit that. ESPN is telling you that the Cowboys are in crisis. Because of Jerry versus CeeDee Lamb. As you know, because you hang out with us here, by the way, I'm Mike Fisher, your trusty and trusted reporter. I've been covering the NFL for 40 years. That's longer than Dan Orlovsky's been alive, I think. I've been covering the Cowboys for 35 years. Been covering Jerry Jones and his dealings for 35 years. I don't know everything, but this is my wheelhouse. And my house, by the way. You're welcome to come on, and actually it's Marsha's house. She lets me hang. Get in, get on, be good. Bring something of intellect to the table, because I promise you, I'm about to. If you are new to what we're doing here, first of all, you don't subscribe yet. Give me a few minutes, then subscribe. Don't hit the like button yet. Give me a few minutes, then hit the like button. You can be critical of CeeDee Lamb. You can be critical of Jerry Jones. You can be critical of Stephen Jones, and boy, are you. You can be critical of the system. This is not a crisis. It's an issue. Jerry Jones did not screw things up in a way he's never screwed them up. It's unbelievable. He did what he always does. He talks like he always talks. When I see somebody, and again, I have great respect for the 71,000 fish heads in Cowboy Nation, but when I see one of you saying, I can't believe Jerry said that, I'm like, you can't? I can. I can, because I've heard him talk like that, and I've had conversations with him face to face where he talks like that for 35 years. Dan Orlovsky is a football guy. I'm not going to deny that. Played in the NFL. I know we're making fun that he wasn't very good, but he played in the NFL. He also has TV-friendly charisma. And that's good. I've said in my compliment to Dan Orlovsky, when he goes, I've seen him go do like color analysis on college football, and he's good. Because he doesn't try to be Stephen A. Bayless, Skip A. Smith. He's just a football guy. He's no dummy, as they all learn at the network. You better talk about the Cowboys or you're not going to last long. You better have played for the Cowboys if you want to get your foot in the door. That would help a lot. But once you get here, if you played for the Lions that nobody cares about relative to the Cowboys, you better talk about the Cowboys, and so they do. Dan Orlovsky is a football guy with TV charisma, but he's not a doctor. He's not a researcher. He's not an expert on a subject that I'm an expert on. And I'm about to help you be an expert on it. Although if you're of a certain age, you may know some of this. I'm going to remind you of some of this. My wheelhouse, 35 years or so of Cowboy conflicts and Cowboy contracts. New claim coming from ESPN and Orlovsky. This time around, he does flame the Cowboys quite a bit. He insists that this contract dispute with CeeDee Lamb will almost inevitably lead to on-field failure. Diddly diddly dink. Really? A training camp holdout almost inevitably, Dan Orlovsky informs us, scientifically apparently, leads to failure. Quote from Orlovsky: when these premier athletes miss time in training camp, usually there's something attached to either the performance or health that isn't on par with the expectations. Meaning, get your finger on the panic button because he's missing time and it's going to screw up the season. He says to one of the other panelists, you say everything will be fine. I disagree. He's squealing now. This season could go downhill fast for the Cowboys. And of course, it could. Take a breath, Dan. And let me help you learn something. Because you're wrong. In Cowboy history and Cowboy lore, you're wrong. First off, Orlovsky's thesis is based on the idea that the Cowboys won't sign Lamb soon. I'm not sure that's right. I'm not sure that's right at all. I think CeeDee Lamb, I think the 4-year thing is easy framework. I think, and I've said this, we said this a couple weeks ago. So A.J. Brown is 32. Justin Jefferson's 35. Those are the two placeholders on either side of where CeeDee Lamb, I wonder if that might end up being, I don't know, 33.5? 4 years, 33.5 APY. Figure out the guaranteed money. Let's get this done. Orlovsky's thesis is based on the idea that it won't get done, not soon enough. What Orlovsky and some others, mostly not you, you've gotten caught up in the silliness of the no urgency and the you're missed and the I got in trouble when I said get that. That's not part of the negotiation. Anybody who thinks that CeeDee Lamb ultimately does not like Jerry Jones is wrong. Anybody that thinks that Dak Prescott doesn't like Jerry Jones, wrong. Even the old veterans who speak out now against what's going on here. Irvin has spoken out against it. Emmitt, Aikman, Haley. They all love Jerry Jones. They just don't like what's going on. There's a difference. Dan Orlovsky's thesis is probably wrong as it regards CeeDee Lamb is not going to sign anytime soon. Probably wrong. But let's buy into his thesis that this is a contract holdout. It's not good. And then Orlovsky's comment, which boils down to this. If a star player misses time in camp, he won't achieve star level heights in the regular season. That's what he's telling us. It's time for the bell. And it's time for a history lesson. Because that's scary stuff. If you're a casual, which ain't you, if you're a casual watching ESPN, getting your Cowboy news from Bristol instead of Frisco, you're going, I don't know, man. Dan Orlovsky, he's saying it. He's saying it's a disaster. And he's saying that it's going to ruin the season because it usually does, a holdout. Jangly, $5 pitch in. It definitely wouldn't be the first time Dan Orlovsky's wrong. When he talks football, he's smart. When he talks Cowboys, he's clownish. Kurt S., is Jerry the kind of owner that ex-players go to for advice all day long? Absolutely. So where Orlovsky and ESPN, this is ESPN, where did ESPN come up with the idea that if you have a training camp holdout, you'll probably have a bad year? Usually. He didn't get it from Cowboys history. They didn't get it from Cowboys history. They pulled it out of their purse. Watch this. Let me counter ESPN's analysis using my 35 years here. Off the top of my head, they went something like this. 1992, Michael Irvin. You probably won't be shocked when I tell you. First of all, this negotiation, people forget about 92 and Michael Irvin because we're so obsessed with 93 and Emmitt, which we'll get to in a minute. This is my great El Paso story. They finally get the contract done. I think it's like a Tuesday night. The Tuesday night before the game, the first game of the regular season. And Steve Endicott was Michael's helper, agent, kind of, but Michael was really his own agent. And he had been a football coach at SMU and they were friends and he kind of helped him. And they're at Valley Ranch. They get it done. They go to Cowboys Cafe right around the corner. I'm invited to go. It's champagne. Champagne's dripping off the ceiling. We're having such a party. And Irvin tells me the story of El Paso. He's negotiating with Jerry, sitting on the other side of the desk in Jerry's office at Valley Ranch. And Jerry writes, and Michael writes down a number. I think it was probably $1 million a year, which is what Jerry Rice was making at the time. And he writes down this number, $1 million. He writes on a piece of paper and he turns it over. He slides it across the desk. And Jerry picks up that piece of paper and he looks at it. He goes, Michael, El Paso. Thinking that El Paso means I'll pass on your offer. Michael, El Paso. We're drinking champagne. We're laughing our asses off. And of course, the deal eventually got done. Probably pretty close to that number. Zach Luna. Seems like journalism as a whole has gone down. I've said this before. I'll say it quickly. Thank you for the comment, Zach. And Jangly to you too, Josh Blaze. Realistic chances we go grab a Miles Sanders. I'll try to get to that in a minute. I have written about Miles Sanders. Remind me, and I'll try to get to that. Watergate caused people who are old enough. Watergate, Vietnam War. Martin Luther King, JFK, Robert Kennedy caused people to say, I don't really want to help the country by going to war. I'd like to help the country by being like Woodward and Bernstein. I'd like to be a journalist. The Fourth Estate, we used to call it. They used to call it. I think Thomas Jefferson called it that. And the idea was the best and the brightest minds were going to be journalists. Wonk, wonk. It didn't work out that way for us. We collectively, we as a fraternity / sorority are some of the doofiest, dorkiest dumbasses you can throw into a room. Seriously. selfish and egomaniacal and so full of ourselves. Not always necessarily bright, the journalistic fraternity. But anyway, Miles Sanders. The problem with the attachment to Miles Sanders is he's on a team. I'm not trading anything for him. And what have I seen out of these? I think Miles Sanders is better than these running backs. What have I seen out of these running backs that makes me go, PU? I haven't seen a problem yet with these running backs. Have you? Michael Irvin, holdout. According to Dan Orlovsky, he missed. Listen, Michael missed the whole thing. He missed all of training camp. And signed on the Tuesday before the first game. And the season was ruined, according to Dan Orlovsky. I went to Irvin's house twice that summer. True story. First time, he's wearing, it's 10 o'clock at night. He's wearing a military vest. It's, I don't know, 30-pound, 50-pound vest. And he's sprinting up the block fast as he can. And then backpedaling all the way back down the block with this big, heavy military vest all night long. At 10:20, he says, let's take a break. And we have to go inside. Why does he want to go inside at 10:20? He wants to watch the news. He wants to see what the news is saying about him. Then at 10:30, guess what we did? Back outside, up the block, backpedal down all night long. Tell me why Michael Irvin was going to be more inclined to get hurt once he showed up. He was training. He was at training camp. He was just in his own front yard. The other day I went to his house is because lightning struck his fireplace and threw bricks all over his yard. So he was out there picking up bricks like it was exercise. Yeah, Dan Orlovsky. He was really not prepared, so unprepared to come to work. He came to work on Wednesday, came to Wednesday practice. What did Michael Irvin do that year, 1992, after missing all of it? Chris Newman, if you know the Jerry Rice brick story, you're pretty smart. Good for you. Irvin, in the first two games, caught 9 passes for 162 yards and scored a touchdown. In week 3 against the Cardinals, I was there, he caught 8 passes for 210 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dan Orlovsky, what are you talking about? He wasn't in training camp the whole time. And it took him this long to be the best receiver in football. Dallas won all 3 of those games. Irvin ends the season as All-Pro, and he keys a Cowboys win in the Super Bowl. Dan Orlovsky, based on your speculative guessing, you're 0 for 1. Based on my Cowboy history knowledge, I'm 1 for 1. Next, 1993, the next year, Emmitt Smith. Everyone knows this one. Nobody remembers the Irvin. Everybody knows this one. In the springtime, Emmitt and his representatives told me they want quarterback money. It was unheard of at the time. Outrageous. I wrote it in the newspaper, and it was just shocking. So he sits and sits and sits. He waits, and he's missing. He didn't just miss all of training camp, ESPN and Dan Orlovsky. He missed the first 2 games. They start the season 0-2. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. They start the season 0-2. And again, I think famously, after the second loss, I was there, Charles Haley walks into the locker room, takes his helmet, and basically throws it, slams it through the sheetrock wall of the locker room. That was the message. Steve from Texas, Emmitt and Irvin are the exceptions. No, they're not. I'm not even half done. Charles Haley throwing his helmet was probably the impetus to get Jerry to say, we're 0-2. And the team's unhappy. We're missing one of our best players, and things are wrong. And we're 0-2. Shortly thereafter, Emmitt gets signed. takes the field for week 3 on the way to let's see. I think he had 1,400 yards, 1,400 yards rushing that year. Makes All-Pro. Associated Press MVP. And oh, by the way, the Jimmy Johnson coach Cowboys win another Super Bowl. Max, didn't Haley almost hit Jerry with his helmet? No. The Orlovsky theory is now 0 for 2. 2019, Zeke. Zeke who? They printed up T-shirts. Jerry said Zeke who? For those of you who think Jerry's saying, no urgency on CD, you don't remember Zeke who? Jerry, what are you going to do without Ezekiel Elliott? Contract. Zeke who? This is 2019. Wasn't that far? You don't remember that? ESPN doesn't remember that? His holdout goes all the way to September. He didn't go to training camp either. By the way, Emmitt won a rushing title, if I'm not mistaken, after missing the first 2 games, Dan Orlovsky, when you say that if you miss summer, it's a disaster. He missed September. Orlovsky 0 for 2. Here comes Zeke. What did he do in 2019 after he signed his $90 million deal? He took the field, finished the season, 301 carries, 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, 54 catches, 400 more yards, 2 more touchdowns. Oh, and he was ranked by his peers as the 24th best player in the NFL that year and made another Pro Bowl. Dan Orlovsky, ESPN, you're 0 for 3. 2023, Zach Martin. Dennis Oliver, if Lamb misses all of training camp, he'll still be a Pro Bowler. That's the point. Listen, you don't want to miss time. It's bad. It's bad to miss reps. It's not a disaster. None of this is a disaster. Chris Warrington, moral of this story is don't listen to these hacks. Stick with Uncle Fish. Zach Martin, this was just last year. And unlike CD Lamb's, the Joneses were taken aback by that. They did not see that coming. Max, any chance of trading for Hassan Reddick? Nobody wants to pay him. You think the Cowboys want to pay him? He wants a long-term, big money contract. You think the Cowboys are giving out long-term, big money contracts? Come on, Max. Zach Martin says, I'm not going to training camp unless you do something with my contract. And the Cowboys rightfully were going, but Zach, we already made you the highest paid guard a couple of years ago. We overpaid you. And now other salaries have caught up with you. And you're saying you're underpaid? That's not fair. And it wasn't fair. The Cowboys were right. But eventually, after saying incendiary things, Jerry's saying, we just can't give him more money. If we give him more money, I think he brought up Micah. If we give him more money, we'll have no money for Micah, is what Jerry said. And of course, it wasn't true. They gave him an $8 million raise or an $8 million adjustment. And Zach Martin came to camp. What did Zach Martin do? On August 14th, by the way, is when he showed up. When he agreed. August 14th, right about the same time now. It's 2 days from now. Right about the same time. Zach agrees to the extension, bumps his pay. How did he and the Cowboys suffer? How did Zach Martin suffer? Dan Orlovsky and ESPN. He suffered by making his 9th Pro Bowl and his 7th All-Pro first team. It damaged Zach Martin so much to miss the same exact amount of training camp time that CeeDee Lamb has missed, that he was first team All-Pro. And someday, Zach Martin will join the aforementioned Irvin, Emmitt, Jimmy, Haley, and Jerry in the Hall of Fame. And Dan Orlovsky and ESPN, you are now officially 0 for 4 on Cowboy players who had extensive holdouts, and you think it ruins the season. What Orlovsky's doing here, by the way, thank you for being a part of what we do here. Thank you for hitting the like button. Now you can hit it. Now that you're going, you know what? Oh, this old Uncle Fish, he's an ugly son of a bitch, but boy, he's smart. He's not one of those dumb journalists. He's got his ducks in a row. If you find that to be the case, now you can hit the like button. And would you please subscribe here to what we do? It's free and worth every penny. What Orlovsky's doing here, and again, he's no dummy. I get it. I get it. I don't know what I would do if I was in that exact same situation. I don't know I don't know how much money it would take to sell your journalistic soul to just go and just say things negative about the Cowboys or positive, whatever pays the bills. Every once in a while, some Uncle Fish critic will say, "You're on Jerry's payroll." And I'm like, no, I'm not. Never taken a dime from him. But I would. If Jerry Jones paid me enough money, I would go work for DallasCowboys.com. Or what? Of course I would. Wouldn't you? Of course I would. There's the 4 Hall of Famers who have missed time, training camp time, and not a disaster among them, no matter what ESPN's telling you. I promise you, CeeDee Lamb, spending a lot of time in Houston. I'm sure his mom appreciates that. I promise you, the CeeDee Lamb that you know is in tremendous shape. Not yet football shape, but either was Zach, Zeke, Emmitt, or Irvin. What Orlovsky's doing here is good theater. X-Pickle, $10 pitch into the super chat. In my opinion, holding out makes things worse. You're hurting team morale. You're missing reps. I don't advise it. I kind of wish that CeeDee Lamb would have held in. Listen, I'm going to show up because I'm going to be with the fellas. But I'm not going to risk breaking my ankle out there. I could see that. Is there a chance that CeeDee Lamb's going to have a bad year? I suppose. I suppose. There's a chance that ESPN might blind squirrel its way to an acorn here. Yeah. But there's absolutely nothing in Cowboys history that suggests a disastrous CeeDee Lamb collapse during the length of the 2024 season, going all the way to January, is going to happen because of an absence in August. Fish out.